This is one of my 11 never-evers of teaching. These are the caveats that you always keep in the back of your mind every day of your teaching career. Greetings, my teacher friends. No matter what grade level, from K4 to high school, never leave your students unprepared. I remember early in my career planning what I thought was an adequate amount of work for my fourth graders, only to be stunned they were finished in 10 minutes, and I was out of ideas. I had no clue of what to do. I had no backup plan. Talk about anxiety. What I failed to do was plan assignments that were long enough for my students to use all of the work time. I failed to realize the potential problem. 1, the work was too easy. It was in no way challenging enough for the level of my students. 2, I drastically misjudged the whole timing of my lesson. If I remember correctly, I only had 15 minutes of whole group instruction, and I believed I was teaching new information. I did not even administer or even do a verbal skills check. I just assumed they didn't know the concepts at all. Now, if there are a few minutes remaining and a couple of students have nothing to do, that's where your "when I am finished" chart comes into use. I'll explain that in a future episode. Students may choose a pre-approved activity to keep themselves busy while you are working with the other students. Administration hates to see students just sitting doing nothing. When students are idle, they will make up things to do, which are not always productive, to say it nicely. This is when potential problems can and will crop up. They will play paper basketball, get out of their seats to go visit friends, start cracking jokes, and the list goes on and on. So be proactive. I would always make sure that the assignment kept most of the students working for the duration. Those who finished early will get an additional higher level question or problem. Not 5, but just 1 or 2 to challenge them, but not overwhelming so they feel like, oh, if I finish early, I just get more work. That's not the goal. Or students could check their work or were allowed to read a book. Secondly, what irritates administration most is when teachers do not leave substitute plans when they are absent. This is the worst situation for the principal, assistant principal, the secretary, the aides, and your entire team. This one omission affects so many. You do not want to fall out of grace with any of them. When teachers don't have plans and work for students, it gets put off onto someone else, maybe a team member or a paraprofessional. And then they are left trying to scramble to pull something together at the last second while being worried about how to handle difficult students. The secretary will not be happy when she has to stop her work to print student class lists because it was not on your desk in your subfolder. And let's hope you get a sub, because if the assistant principal or learning coach has to sub for you and you have no plans, you get the picture. Not a good look. Can be a bit of a mess. So, if you want to leave a professional impression when you are not at work, take care of this now. Really, in September, you should have the basics all together. Your substitute plans should at least include your typical schedule for the day, a seating chart with names of students, simple lesson plans for each subject you teach, and an explanation of how you handle behaviors. I usually have a typed 2 to 3 page schedule with the times and a short summary of what the teacher will do and what the students will do. The substitute teacher does not have a lot of time to read a 10-page lesson plan, so I try to condense it as much as possible. Last, always leave more work than they can possibly complete. I usually have extra review packets or additional textbook assignments. On your desk with your subfolder, leave the teacher manuals and answer keys. In addition, Textbooks and all materials should be visible, labeled, and easy to acquire. Student copies with extras, yes extras, should be printed and labeled on your desk. You may be asked to have other documents available as well based on administrative directive. Also, if you plan for your students to use technology while you are absent, that means all the passcodes, including yours, need to be available. That means students have been trained on procedures and routines. It also means you are entrusting someone else with the care of these devices. The last note about being absent: the more you can prepare your students for your absence, I have found, the better they behave. In my experience, if I shared my absence with them and told them exactly what they would be doing and what I expected, it was not a shock for them coming in and realizing I was not there the next day. The work that I left was always a review of previous skills taught and mostly self-directed, so that the sub would not have to be stressed trying to actually teach a new concept and they could monitor students and check work. The work would be engaging, but not just fun. I wanted to avoid potential problems of an activity that was more active. I know this would differ for primary students since I taught mostly 4th through 8th graders. The point is, try to use every minute of class time for teaching, practicing, and discussing. Most of the time, I was over-prepared, depending on the type of assignment, and I made sure that I took time to prepare when I was absent. Thank you for listening. I am Mrs. Jefferson, and I have been an educator for nearly 30 years. I want to share what I have learned and how I dissected this massive responsibility of teaching. With a little bit of crazy, some tailored organization, and clever ways to manage students, and keeping yourself motivated, you can have a great career as a teacher. Some of you are already great. For those like me who developed and continue to grow every year, this is for you. Even if you are a veteran, there's always room for new ideas and a new perspective. And if you are a newbie and have just started your career, I hope to shed some light on the ins and outs of teaching in a district.